Hey, what's going on, bike people of the internet? In this video we're going to do a restoration on this 1999 Raleigh RSP450. I picked up this bike off a Facebook marketplace for £220, so definitely not a cheap bike, but it's full of quality components and it's a built in the UK Reynolds 853 frame, so I think it was a decent value proposition, but it definitely needs work. Looking at some of the parts on the bike, it was definitely loved back in the day with its carbon fibre brake booster, for example. Most of the components are Shimano XT, and it's got this wicked flame paint job. But with these skinny commuter tyres, I think they're just 1 inch wide. It's really hard to get a feel for it as it is currently, so let's take it back to the garage and get it stripped down and work out what we're going to do. So, back in the garage, let's have a fly around the bike, make some assessments and figure out an action plan, what we want to do with it. So let's start from the top here, the handlebars down. It's got these X-like bar ends, anodized red and a bit sort of scratched up. They're probably reusable, but I think I'm going to get rid of them. I'm not a massive fan of bar ends, they're kind of cold and awkward and narrow the bars up. Some aftermarket specialized grips here, a bit past their sell by date. It's got this really nice Shimano Dual XT shifters, but I feel like the rear shifter here is a later version. It's also got a double release on it, which is actually a bonus because I prefer shifting that way compared to the other side. So we've got sort of Mega 9 one side. It's a 9-speed XT shifter, but yeah, it's not great. On that side we've got another X-like bar end. Lovely Synchros stem here with that sort of integrated sort of top cap. It's proprietary to it, so glad that's all there. It's got this lovely Synchros made in Canada look up on that, which I think is pretty neat, so keen to keep that. Yeah, that's lovely, that Synchros stem, so that's definitely staying. FSA headset, seems like a sealed one from the outside. It's probably a quality item back in the day, so we'll see if we can keep that. Some bad cable scratches going on there. We'll have to look at polishing those out the frame if possible. Here we have the Raleigh Special Products headset badge there, a bit different to the usual Raleigh one. Moving down, Manitou SX forks, and I think these have 80 or 70, 80 mm travel, so not super loads of travel there, but perfect for a cross-country bike. No perceivable scratches on the stanchions under the boots there, which is good. The stickers are a bit scratched up, but they're probably passable. Got the cool XT parallelogram V-brakes, 2nd generation ones here. I think these are my favourite. They look really cool and chunky, so I'm keen to keep those. Brake pads look quite thin though. Oh, moving around, trying to find out where I am. It's got these Continental Grand Prix little skinny commuter tyres, far too skinny, like what we know about bikes now. That's no good. XT hubs on this bike, so I'm thinking this build is completely XT. 517 Mavic rims, not ceramics, but they're definitely very nice and welded, so and double wall, so yeah, decent set of wheels. Keen to reuse those and get them back on the bike, so they look like they've got some decent life left in them. Let's move around the bike a bit here. Yeah, there's lots of cable rub under there, so we'll try to clear that up with giving the frame a detail. Trying to get the camera to focus here on the top tube because it's quite badly scratched up from where the cables rubbed it in the past, so hopefully we can polish a lot of those scratches out of it. Seat post, it's got a Synchros seat post, which is quite nice. It's very scratched up though, so yeah, we would like to reuse that. It's got a big fat saddle on here. I think this might be a specialized saddle, early body geometry one, so that's going to go in the bin because it's tired and knackered and just too squidgy. I like my racing saddles. Moving to the back here, it's got a carbon fibre Shimano brand brake booster here, which is really cool, especially because these seat stays are very thin on this bike, like pencil thin almost. So yeah, this is my finger, and it's like, yeah, finger sized tubes, and it gets thinner down at the dropouts, so super thin dropouts on this bike down here. Yeah, as you can see, my fit is way thinner and my finger down at the dropouts, so super twangy, hopefully, feeling. rear mech Shimano XT, and that cable's a bit too tight there for my liking, so we're going to give it a brand new cables everywhere. But yeah, that bend at the end there is not good, and it's probably contributing to it not shifting great. Again, XT rear hub. We've even got this Shimano XT shark fin here, so yeah, super cool. Probably a bit old, it's probably a different generation to the bike. XT chain set here, again, very nice. Teeth don't look too worn, so it looks all good. This is an XT front derailleur, so I'm hoping like everything XT on this bike. Reynolds 853 frame, so this must be quite an early Reynolds 853 frame. It's still popular in today. My Cockpit build from 2022 has an 853 frame. Quality stuff, gives great ride feel. But overall, yeah, that's the bike. So yeah, what do you reckon? I love the paint job. This was a sort of mountain bikes that were out when I first started getting into the sport. I'm pretty sure my local bike shop Denton's in Summertown, it's no longer there, but they had one of these bikes up on the stand there once, and I remember drooling over it as a 16 year old. Yeah, super nice. The chain's just about okay from a wear perspective. It's starting to go through in some places, but not others, so yeah, we'll bin this chain, but hopefully the cassette will be fine. So my plan for this bike is complete strip down, service everything, replace what's necessary, and build it back up as a sort of period correct bike. So not a resto mod or anything like that, it's a period correct restoration is what my plan is. So we want all the components to be from sort of the late 90s, early noughties. Yeah, and yeah, no resto mod on this one. I think all the gear looks in decent condition on it, mostly XT components, so we'll try to reuse as much as possible. So yeah, let's start the strip down. As always, I'm going to start by trying to remove the chain set, because it's generally the most tricky part of any of these builds. I already pre-removed the pedals because the pedals on it were rubbish. I fitted my own pedals for the sort of cruise around and trying to assess how it felt, but yeah, the pedals are rubbish, so I pulled those off already, and we're trying to get the chain set off. So with the chain off, we can drop the bike to the floor, and I always recommend this because at any point on the bike build, this is where you're going to be putting the most force for it. Keep the wheels on the bike, and then put the bike on the floor, remove the chain set this way, so you can really lean against the bike and not stress out the seat post or the seat tube or anything like that. So yeah, that's sort of my top recommendation. These, I'm not sure if these are going to be square taper or early Octolink cranks. So as soon as I pull this off, I'll have a look inside here, and yeah, we've got a very early version of this XT, which is square taper. Later versions were the Octolink sort of version. Both have benefits and negative points, but for me it's kind of a benefit is I think square taper is a little easier but more prone to breakages, whereas the other one's less prone to breakages but more prone to bearing failures. Just sort of pick your poison, I think. So yeah, I was just checking in there with inside the chain set there, looking for any washers or anything in the way of this chain set removal tool, and making sure there's no washers or anything I needed to remove, so it's not going to get in the way and damage the threads, and then just simply wind it in and it pulls the chain set off. And with it now loosened on the spline, we can sort of remove the chain set tool there and pop it off the bottom bracket. So yeah, this is I think it's a M750 chain set. It's pretty grubby on that side, looks like it's never been cleaned. So yeah, M750, made in Japan, 175mm long, so quite long cranks, but yeah, nice quality piece of kit here, and not too worn out and polished up where people tend to rub them with their feet. Moving on to the non-drive side now, let's pop off this little bolt that holds it on. You can see this side has a bit more foot rub on it, unfortunately, but it's not too bad. It's perfectly acceptable from my point of view. It's not factory fresh, but you know, it's fine. It's 6 out of 10. I would score it if I was doing some sort of preservation thing. Now, as we went to the non-drive side, I had some problems removing this side from the bike. It felt incredibly tight, so I sort of put the chain set removal tool into the crank there, wound it in, and boy was it tight on the bike. Usually after a little bit of force you get used to this and get a feeling for it, but god, it was super tight on the splines there. so much sure. I wasn't even sure there was no washers in there, so I sort of backed it all off and had a look under the spline to make sure I'm doing it right, because you can damage the chain set here if you're not careful. If there's something in the way, a washer or something along those lines, you can rip the threads out of the crank, completely ruining the crank for future use, because it makes it nearly impossible to remove from the bottom bracket. So I just wanted to double check in there that everything was fine, perfect, and it was fitting into each other. It was quite a tight fit on this BB for my chain set for some reason. It's almost like it needed a clearance machining, but it fits in there. It's just a very sort of precise fit. It's not like, it's not a sloppy fit in there. It was like you had the tool had to wiggle perfectly in the square taper spline section of the crank to fit in. This is one of those chain set tools which can do multiple ones. So it has an adapter which can do the ISIS spline ones. So yeah, just making sure it's perfect before giving it the big beans. And this is why I recommend, putting your bike on the floor as well, because if you're putting all this leverage and it's resolved through the seat post, it's not really designed to take that kind of load. It will, but if you had a lightweight fancy seat post whilst it's being clamped and twisted, you could buckle it potentially. So yeah, it come off in the end, but it's super tight. So I'm wondering, is this the first time in this bike's 25-year history that this crank may have come off in reality. I think we'll find out when we take the bottom bracket out in some ways, because I'm hoping everything on this bike is Shimano XT. So I'm hoping the bottom bracket is a UN 72. That would indicate that it's like a factory fresh 25-year-old original bottom bracket. It felt smooth, so it feels reusable, but yeah, that's right at the edge of the limitation of my chain tool. And just checking this side, it's a 175 M750 crank, so yeah, we've got a matching set there. You never know, someone might have done a repair in the past and put a shorter crank on. Might give you issues. And whilst we're on this side of the bike, let's remove the plastic cup from the BB. I generally tend to remove the cartridge side first if I can, but I'm being lazy here. It's slightly easier the other way around, I feel, because you've got a sliding thing moving out, but it works both ways, but I'm just being a bit lazy. If I was being super pedantic, I should really be undoing the other side first, but it's fine. It can make this work. The threads are really dirty here, so my tool is only sort of just engaging with this plastic one, so we'll have to give that a scrub up if we're going to reuse it in the future. Onto the drive side now, and this side popped out no problems at all, which is I'm thankful for, to be honest. So I've had a few very tight bottom brackets in the past. This one undid no problems, which is a really nice treat. No need to get some extra heat into the area or penetrating oil or anything like that. It just undid like it should do. So props to the people who put this in the bike. Maybe it was the people at Raleigh back in the day. There was a little bit of grease in there, so maybe it was maybe factory fresh. You can see a bit of grease on that. And as I suspected, this is a Shimano UN 72, so that's the XT level bottom bracket. So yeah, it's looking like everything on this bike from the factory was Shimano XT. It's like, how nice is that? Sort of second of the top end. Yeah, super stoked with that. So it's gonna reuse that bottom bracket as it is. With the chain set removed, we can put it back up into the bike stand and work on it as per normal. Let's have a look inside the bottom bracket to check out the condition of what it looks like in there, see if there's any rust or something we've got to be concerned about. And to be fair, that just looks like a little bit of road grime. Same as on the outside around the area, it's probably crept in through that little hole at the bottom there. So overall condition, excellent I think. No signs of rust or anything in there, so yeah, really nice. Let's cut all the shifter and brake cables now, get them out the way and collect up all those little donuts so they don't end up all over the floor. I'll try to reuse those if I can. Next, let's release the brakes and pop off the wheels from the bike so it's a bit more compact and easier to work around. If you've got limited space, a bit like I do, this is just my garage, my floor coming up there. That's something I worked on the other day. Space is a premium. Make the bike smaller, make it easier to maneuver around, make it easier to fit in your life. Pop the wheels off the bike, it makes so much sense. There's no point keeping them on at this point in this sort of stage, just get them out the way. Next, let's remove this front V-brake. Yeah, I absolutely adore the looks of these sort of second generation parallel push. Is that what they're called from Shimano things? I can't quite remember. Parallelogram V-brakes, especially these XT level ones. These are like the brake I wished for when I was a teenager. If it wasn't Hope disc brakes, these would be my second choice. And I just love how chunky they are. They're just chunky, they have replaceable like cartridge style brakes pads in them, and yeah, they just like look powerful and pumped up compared to most V-brakes. I know it's probably a lot of mechanism just making space for them, but just the finish and everything, the way they look, I just think they look absolutely fantastic, and these ones look to be in decent condition, so I'm really stoked to have these. It's the first time in my life I've had these XT level, this 750 level brakes. So I'm really stoked to have these. So I'm just collecting the parts as they come off the bike here in a little Ziploc bag, sandwich bag. It's just the way I like to do things, and keep the front brakes with the front brakes and the rear brakes with the rear brakes. It all kind of makes sense to me. But my brain isn't the best and logical, but I'm very particular and methodical. So yeah, I just want to keep everything together so I don't lose it and lose small parts, because losing small parts is a nightmare. Onto the rear brake next, and we get to work on this beautiful carbon fibre brake booster. Now I'm quite keen to have a good inspection of this bit. Is obviously carbon fibre and resins do have a bit of a shelf life sometimes, depending on the particular resin mix. Some of my experience with the motorsport industry coming here, some resins don't do well over a long period of time when exposed to UV light. So if this was left in a shed or something outside for a long time, the actual resin that binds the carbon fibres together can break down. But in this case it looks fine. I can't see any signs of nicks or dents into it, or signs of particular browning, which is the one you have to look out for. If the carbon fibre is starting to look brown, if you know the history of it compared to others, that's a sign of UV damage to the carbon fibre. And I'm not a specialist in this, but something to be aware of if you're looking at carbon fibre frames particularly. And I've just sent all the spacers flying there, doing it, not paying attention. But in overall condition, this carbon fibre brake booster looks to be in condition. There's a couple of little bits on it where the carbon is sort of not quite perfect, but we'll give it a clean up and see what it looks like. Like it's in an abrasive environment in that section there, and this is early carbon fibre, I guess. So maybe the resin systems aren't quite perfect for what they needed in the late 90s. It's like wild pimping for Shimano for the late 90s to have carbon fibre brake booster, but in reality that's probably one of the perfect materials for that application. Yeah, that's a really good choice of materials for a brake booster. Super light, super sturdy in a direction, and yeah, just is optimal. And again, collect everything, stick it in a little bag, and make sure I don't lose any of those spacers. Let's move up the bike next and remove the seat from it. This is a specialised body geometry saddle. It's seen better days, I think. This one is for the bin. I don't like these chunky saddles at all. This bike would originally come with a WTB looking at the catalogue, which would have been way nicer. But this sort of chunky style comfort saddle, it's 100% not for me. It doesn't work for my body type. I like the racy saddles that allow you to sit in a more sort of forward leaning aggressive position rather than sort of a upright commuter tourist position, I don't know how you call it. But yeah, this saddle doesn't work for me, and it's very tired, so it's going to go in the bin. The foam sort of collapsed in a bit when I took it for a ride, so it's one for the bin, that one. Rear derailleur next. Let's remove the cable from the area first. This is actually it's not in great condition. I think I got an XT M750 level 9-speed Mega 9 rear derailleur in my collection. Is better condition than this, so I might end up using that. But it does have one perk. It's got the little boot that it has on the barrel adjuster there, and it's not split or in bad condition. So maybe I'll do a bit of a mix and match to find the best option out of all my parts. Because it's a bit scratched up, this derailleur, especially on the rear side, as you'll see in a minute. It's not perfect at all, but serviceable. It's going to go in my spare parts collection. I'm sure I got a nicer looking one off of the Cannondale Super V. That had a really nice XT rear derailleur on that one, in good condition, so I might fit that one, but I'm pretty sure it didn't have the boot on it. So I might nick this boot, stick it on that derailleur, then use that derailleur on this build and put this one in the spare parts. Because, you know, if I got the part there, let's use the best condition one for this build, I feel. Onto the front derailleur, and I'm sincerely hoping there's not a mess or corrosion or anything too bad underneath it. I'm assuming it's never been off the bike before. Again, it's a lovely M750 spec model, so we've literally got a complete matching set, I'm pretty sure, for this bike. Brakes, hubs, derailleurs, crankset, and even I'm hoping that the cassette is the equivalent as that as well. I'm not taking it off yet at this point. Take this off, and it doesn't look too bad under there. It's a bit sort of squirrely, the paint. Hopefully that'll come up, but there's no signs of corrosion anywhere. Let's get the bottle cage off whilst we're working in this area. This is quite a nice bottle cage. Knowing that I'm in the future now, I haven't fitted a bottle cage to the bike. I'm just thinking to myself, where did I put this bottle cage, and why haven't I reinstalled it? The red's a perfect match for the bike, so I might go do that in a bit. I'll go find out where I put that in the spare parts and reinstall it, because yeah, it's a perfectly good serviceable Tax bottle cage, and it's crazy. Tax is a brand that's still going now, like it's making all the indoor turbo trainers and stuff. So I wonder if that's where they started doing bottle cages and small cycling accessories, and they've moved into the world of indoor training as a sort of business progress. That'd be quite a crazy thing to do. Start as a bottle cage, bending a bit of metal with some co-molded injection plastic and getting onto those. Anyhow, let's remove these X-Lite bar ends from these X-Lite titanium bars next. I'm quite curious to see how that bar end plug sat on it, if it's integrated into the bars or into the bar end somehow, and it's into the bars. These X-Lite bar ends are super light, but I'm not a massive fan of bar ends. I just don't love them. But you can't quite make it out from this image, but they've already started bending the bars a little bit, where if you have an impact, especially on these like extremely thin, lightweight bars that were used in the late 90s, made out of high performance aluminium and titanium, if they have impacts, they can put little dents and creases into the bars, which is never good. You'll see that in a minute when I take the grips off, but it's not great, so I won't be refitting these bar ends. I do wonder if they could be restored though in some ways. I wonder if you could use like a Sharpie to sort of recolor in the anodized red and make it look less hideous, because it's the nature of these bar ends. You lean the bike up against the wall, and the metal takes the brunt of the sort of storing of the bike. It's just there. Anyhow, let's remove these specialized grips. They're a bit sticky and worn out, so no need for those, and I've got a plan. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to cut it off without scoring the bars. I'm very conscious these bars are probably quite sensitive. They're titanium, so titanium's quite an interesting material if you've not played around with it. It's kind of not sensitive. It's unusual. So I'm trying to make sure I don't put a really big deep scratch into a very thin wall piece of metal we've got going on here. If it's aluminium, the aluminium bar of a similar weight will have a way thicker wall thickness because the material is less dense, whereas a titanium is a peculiar material. It's probably got the highest strength to weight ratio of any of the metals, if I think right. But like, that doesn't mean in section that this bar, to be a competitive weight with the aluminium ones, would have very thin walls, probably less than a millimeter, and that's why it has a dent where the bar end was. Just the torque of the bar end and any potential crashes or levering on it has put a small crease in this area, so extremely keen not to use bar ends on these bars again. It won't affect the performance, because even if it did snap all the way up there, like, it's going to snap 1.5 centimeters off the end of the bars, and it doesn't see any leverage up there really. The main torque your hand applies through your the pad of your thumb under there, which is away from that section, so I'm relatively sure they're safe. It's never 100%, but in all the things, I think it's probably okay. It's a bit risky, but you could always buy new bars, but it's my risk to take. If they fail, it's on me. But yeah, I'm super keen to reuse these made in the UK X-Lite titanium bars, because I think they look absolute prime, especially because they're a bit unusual looking. They're kind of polished titanium, which is a weird thing in its own, but yeah, it's just they're not shiny chrome, and they're not. When you look at them, you're like, ooh, that's something a bit unusual. Let's remove all these brakes and shifters. So we've got the M750 brake levers here, super nice. Actually really stoked to have these in very good conditions, no scratches on them, so absolute mint, super stoked. Onto the opposite side next, or am I onto the, no, I'm onto the shifter. So I think this shifter is M760, so it would have been out in the early noughties, so it's an upgrade, still Mega 9. As you can see, the sort of logo is embossed into it with injection molding. In some ways I'm kind of keen to keep this because it's got the dual release on the downshift, so you can shift it from both directions. So using your thumb or finger, you can pull or push the down release, which is nice. I like that. It's same as on current XT. So I actually wouldn't mind reusing that. I haven't got an M750 level Mega 9 shifter anywhere, 9-speed shifter, so it's my only option unless I go source one from eBay or something like that. So for now, we're going to reuse that one. I think it just needs a little service. I'll give it a little spray of GT85 inside to clean it up. The indexing on the front derailleur is not perfect. It almost doesn't want to go into the third big ring gear, so that needs a little service. Generally the way I do that initially, just to get them up and running, instead of a full service, you can just spray some spray lubricant in there like GT85. What happens is the grease dries up and gets gammed up in between the ratchets in there, and yeah, just a bit of spray lubricant in there and cycling it a load of times will sort of release that extra position you might be missing. So it's a really easy little workaround. It's not perfect. Ideally you'd crack it open and then service it and strip all the grease out, but so fiddly. Proper like sit down somewhere safe and make sure you don't lose the parts job to do that. But yeah, sometimes just a little bit of spray lubricant can get you there. And yeah, after that we've released the X-Lite bars, and yeah, I'm a bit in love with these bars. I think they're super cool. Yeah, I love titanium. Let's remove this Canadian made lovely synchro stem next. Again, I'm keen to not lose parts of this because parts vanish accidentally, so I'm putting all the bits in here because I'm guessing that's a wedge mechanism because it's not got a pinch bolt. Might end up splitting apart into bits and pieces if I sort of left it out, and an O-ring or something might disappear. But yeah, it's in decent condition. It's not perfect. I think it's been on, like the bike's been upside down on the floor a couple of times, so it's got a couple of scratches on it, but let's stick it all in the bag and reuse it all again. And let's remove the headset and all its bits and pieces again, put them in a little sandwich bag here to keep all the pieces together with each other, and we can release the forks once that little expander wedge comes away. Thankfully this is a proper like a headset design on this bike and not some sort of knockoff Diacomp weird stuff they made with like compression expanding wedges and stuff. Surprisingly, it's actually really good conditions and the bearings feel perfect, so I'm going to reuse it. I'm not even going to press the bearings out of the frame. I'm going to keep them installed and just reuse it as it is. Now nearly everything's done on this teardown. Let's put the frame in the stand rather than the seat post and remove the seat post from the bike and make sure it's in adequate and serviceable condition. The previous owner had the seat post a bit more slammed than I do, so it's a bit scratched up in my sort of usage zone where I like my saddle height. It's a bit unfortunate, but when I sort of inspected the bike when I bought it, it moved fine. It wasn't stuck in the frame, that's the most important thing, but it is kind of greasy and decent there. It's just got a couple of scratches. I'm not sure what that hole is for the bottom area. Is that just a weight reduction thing from back in the day? Not sure. Anyhow, last thing we need to do is remove this shark fin chainstay protector. I won't be refitting it to this bike, but I do have an idea for a bike it can go on. I think it's just the bike is the wrong period for a shark fin in my mind. Shark fins are sort of early to mid 90 type things, sort of 92 up to 96, 7 maybe. Definitely in cantilever era rather than V-brakes. So it looks a little bit out of place. I mean, it's done a job here. It's kept the chainstay in really good condition, and it does remind me it's a job I need to do in future is find a decent chainstay protector for this bike. It might be quite tricky because the chainstays are so thin. So if you've got any good ideas, put them down in the comments. Obviously the sticky back of the shark fins fall out, but I might fit that on my 93 Kona. I think it would look good on that bike, so yeah, look out for a little update for that bike in the future. Yeah, but pretty stoked to have a shark fin, to be fair. First time in my life I've ever had a shark fin, and yeah, I think it looks cool. And the final part we need to do is remove the cassette from the wheels. I took the tyres off in a separate. I didn't film it because they're just knackered old Continental tyres, aren't they? They're not Street Fighters. What am I thinking about? A Street Fighter styly. I quite like the idea of a Street Fighter bike at the moment. Yeah, Continental Grand Prix, little skinny commuter tyres, 26-inch ones. I think I've had some of these passed long time ago in a mid-noughties when I was commuting on bike, and I can't see a part number on it, but it's because it's so grimy. But to me, that sort of spider, it probably indicates it's an XT level rear cassette we got here. So yeah, full XT kit we got on this bike. So let's have a fly around this bike and sort of assess the condition of the frame now. Sort of teardown's complete. The bearings and the headset feel mint. They are absolutely perfect. That's why I didn't remove them. I'll just give them a clean up and leave them be, to be honest. Some serious cables sort of scruffs there going through the red paint into the yellow, so I'm guessing the sort of liquid yellow. That's a nice Renault colour. It's the best colour if you ever buy a Renault, I think, is that sort of championship liquid yellow from the sort of Fernando Alonso era, I call it. There's a couple of Clios in that colour. I love it. Yeah, so that's it. That's sort of base colour, and it's worn through there. It's quite tarnished, I would say. It's probably 5 out of 10 condition. There's lots of little chips and stuff, but I'm not in a mood to repaint it. I think I'll just make it look worse if I try to sort of touch it up and find the right colour match. It's just never going to happen with this metallic. So formula plan, my ambition is to just clean it, polish it and leave it be, I think. So yeah, that's it for the frame. One thing I did notice when handling it is this frame is phenomenally light for a steel frame. It is absolutely unreal. So I thought I'd just grab my luggage scales here, that's the best I can do, and try to get a measurement, because it felt unnaturally light for a steel frame. So I don't know if you can see it here, but it's coming out on my scales. If I would let them steady himself, there's 1,850 grams. It's saying 2 there, but I don't think I had the tare quite right. When I redid it, it's 1,850 grams for the frame and headset, which is absolutely nuts. So what's that in kilos? Not kilos, I meant pounds. So I think we're looking at bang on about 4 pounds here. So 1,800 with the headset is 4.1 pounds. So we're probably looking for a 4 pound frame here, which I think is incredible for a steel frame from the late 90s. Really, a mountain bike as well. So yeah, really good. Yeah, so very light. hand-built 853 Reynolds frame. That's around £4 for £200. That's a killer deal, I think, all in all. So I'm hoping it rides really nice once it's built. So we're kind of into phase 2 of this restoration now, and that's sort of part prep basically. We'll start with the frame, and we're going to give it a clean. So I just got a little squirty bottle here with some automotive car wash inside it. It doesn't need a full like hose down, it's not that dirty, it's just getting the grime and stuff off of it. That's the main important thing. Around the rear derailleur here is a bit grimy, it didn't come off with a microfiber alone, so I just use a pick to get the most of it. There was a stubborn stain here. I think it was like ingrained dirt from where the cable was rubbing potentially. So what I'm using here is automotive clay and some lubricant, which is just soap in a bottle. Car soap, not dish soap, don't use that, that'll ruin your paint. But what it does is it picks up sort of ingrained dirt, so if you've ever got like tar spots on your car, this stuff is the business. Recommend it, just use it sparingly because you can scratch your car to pieces. Because the frame is quite heavily tarnished, we're going to start the sort of paint restoration on the frame with some T-cut. Just apply it with a towel, go round and round and round. You've seen me do this a bunch of times if you watch my videos. Not an expert at painting and polishing, but I have a passing interest in it because I like automotive stuff as well. I do bicycle YouTubes, but I'm a massive petrol head. I've worked in a couple of automotive type jobs in the past. So yeah, let's get this sort of clean and sparkling. Basically several rounds of T-cut, and it's coming up pretty good. I would say overall condition is good but not great. There's a couple of chips and dents, but it's a 25-year-old bike, it's never going to be perfect, and the perfect ones are usually found in someone's loft already. So phase 2, I like to use Auto Glim Super Resin Polish. I don't see anybody else using this stuff, it's just a me thing. I think in the level of perception, this stuff has almost as good as effect as T-cut. If you haven't got a car, it's not worth using. I usually use this on my car like twice a year, and I reckon it just makes everything look absolutely sparkling afterwards. It's the way it's formulated. It's a mild polish, but it's also got fillers built in, so it kind of acts like a chemical wax is the best way to put it. So it'll fill in small scratches in the frame, so like that top lacquer clear coat will look spectacular, and it'll cover up small scratches for you. I always think it looks awesome with a bit of Auto Glim Super Resin Polish. It's relatively cheap to buy a big bottle like I got there, and it will last you years and years, so I think it's worth the effort. And as you can see, it's really sort of increased the luster of the frame, and I don't know why I'm pointing the camera at the floor. I was picking up my sort of little daylight light here to sort of show the reflections. As you can see, super shiny now, lovely, and in great condition. So I usually leave it for a day after this. Then I use some ceramic polish, which we'll move to into the next bit. It's just a sealant, really, the ceramic, so it just kind of seals your hard work in and repels dirt and rain and makes it easier to clean in the future. You see a lot of people mucking around with trying to offer ceramic coating stuff you can apply to your bike. I wouldn't bother with any of that. I think ceramic coatings in the automotive industry are pretty much dead now. Everybody's moved into PPF as the sort of main thing. As you can see, the top tube here is still pretty scratched up, but it's the best I can do without sort of getting machine polishing and all that sort of craziness into it. But yeah, ceramic coatings are sort of, they can't sell it in the automotive industry, so they're sort of palming it onto bikes now. So instead of a little bottle of ceramic, like proper coats, which is a bit dodgy, I like to use these sprays. They're nowhere near as durable as proper ceramic coats, but it's a bike, you won't notice the difference, and this will perform more than adequate for what we need. So I generally spray it on and give it a few seconds to settle, then buff it off with a clean microfiber towel. One thing I would mention about sort of this particular one, the Turtle Wax Hybrid Ceramic, is it tends to like lessen the luster you put on your bike initially. So this is way too much I'm putting on here now. I'm just going mad with the stuff. But it definitely takes away the luster initially, like you've put into the bike, I think, and it comes back a day or two later after it hardens. It's quite a strange product, I find. So yeah, use with caution. But yeah, I think the end result was pretty nice, and I'm happy with the sort of overall finish and luster on a bike after all this hard work. It's probably 2.5, 3 hours of cleaning just to get it to this stage. Obviously time in between, but yeah, it's just cleaning is cleaning. It's just elbow grease. There's no shortcuts to it really. It's just hard work and getting it as good as you possibly can. Next part of part prep is just to give everything a good strip down and clean. So yeah, take apart all the chain set and chainring bolts, because let's be honest, these have never been off the bike before. Get a bowl of hot soapy water using car soap, not dishwashing soap, and just give everything the scrub of its life, just to try to get all the ingrained dirt and grime off of it all. That's all there is to it really. It's just elbow grease, and I've got hours and hours of footage that I won't bore you with of this, so I'm just montaging it really fast. So yeah, I give everything a real good going over a bowl of hot soapy water and a toothbrush effectively. Get everything clean as possible. It's just the only way. I don't want to refit this stuff to my bike when it's in this bad condition. I just want to make it sparkly new, and it's really easy to do. All you have to do is keep going until you can't see any dirt. It's simple. Yeah, so there's hours of this footage. I won't bore you with it. I'll just sort of concentrate on the chain set and cassette there because they're the two grimiest bits. But yeah, just do all that and reassemble it all, and you're kind of ready to go. So I had a saddle in mind in my sort of spare parts bin that I wanted to use on this bike. It's this sort of mid to late 90s flight titanium that came off of the Cannondale Super V build. I'll link it above. To use on the bike because it's red and it kind of goes with the red and yellow colour scheme. Bit McDonald's sensitive maybe, if you like McDonald's, bit McLovin' it. But it's a flight titanium, it's red, and I wanted to see if I could restore it effectively to use on this bike. So I gave it a clean with some automotive leather cleaner here, and I'm going to try to use this renovation cream on it, picked up from Amazon, to see if I can restore the saddle. Now, my only potential sort of negative on this is that big split in the saddle and the leather. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to recover that, but I'm going to give it a go. It's a weird little pot of like coloured leather cream is the best way to put it. So I'm guessing there's some sort of plasticizer in there when it dries. And hopefully we're going to bring the saddle back. I was willing to experiment. I think the saddle's a bit too far gone and the sort of colour's worn out in areas. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to use this cream as a filler for that split. Then anything else I'm just kind of generally in very, very light coatings, painting it onto the rest of the saddle to recolour the leather and recondition it as well. And yeah, see, I'm going to sort of montage this and show you the results and let me know what you think, if it's worth doing or not, because yeah, I'm not unhappy with the results really. So this is the first coat going on here, so I'm basically just trying to do a very light coating, just get it over all the troublesome areas. I don't think the colour is a super nice match. I think this is a very much a richer red than the actual saddle colour, but it'll do. It'll be perfectly fine. Sort of the red on it is a bit more yellow, where this is sort of a much richer red. It's not burgundy or cricket ball red, but it's going that direction, if you know what I mean. This is kind of like Ferrari red, I guess. It's a bit deeper red than the original saddle. So yeah, just several light coats of this stuff, and I think it's really sort of the scuffs on the leather where the colour was coming off vanished within 2 coats. So yeah, if you've got a sort of scuffed up leather saddle, this stuff could be your answer. And there's hundreds, maybe not hundreds, maybe there's 20-25 colours on that Amazon store. Go have a look. And I'm being particular not to colour in that flight in yellow at the front of this saddle as well, because I kind of very matches the build, the flight in yellow. I'm just mostly trying to give it a fill in through that crack there, and this is over a couple of days, so I'll do it in the morning before work and then take it from there. Overall, and you'll see the saddle a bit later in the build, I think it came out pretty good. The crack's still visible, but I can live with it. We'll see how it holds up under use. I think that's the most important factor. So with all those parts prepared, let's move on to phase 3 and get this rebuild underway. Start off by laying a thick layer of grease inside the seat tube to stop the aluminium seat post galvanically corroding with the steel bike frame. So this is quite an important thing. You can see this on Instagram or many other stories of seat posts getting stuck inside bikes, and it's a problem when you have a mix of alloys. So say a steel bike and an aluminium seat post, or a titanium bike and aluminium seat post, they tend to react with each other in a galvanic way. I can't even explain a galvanic corrosion correctly, so I won't try. Stick it in with plenty of grease and it'll protect it for the future. With the seat post now in place, we can now clamp it in the bike stand on the seat post. It's wrecked enough to not to worry about any potential scratches getting on it, and it's better than clamping it on the little derailleur cable boss there. Moving on to the bottom bracket next. I'm trying to use up this tube of grease, so I'm actually going a bit too crazy with the grease on this one. Plus I want to protect it for the future. I don't know when the bottom bracket will come out next on this bike. It may not even be within my ownership. So yeah, let's make sure it's fully installed with a ridiculous amount of grease, because the grease I'm using here, I'm not a particular fan of it. It's too greasy. I know it sounds stupid, but it's very much like a for some reason it reminds me of some burger fat or something disgusting like that. I just don't like this particular white creamy grease I got here, so I'm just trying to use the last remains of it up. I've got a sort of grease strategy for the future, which doesn't involve those annoying little tubes, which come out in the next video or so once I do another build. I've got a decent strategy. It's more cost effective in the long term. Anyhow, let's screw the non-drive side of the bottom bracket in. At this point it's not fully home on that side, because we need to install the cartridge side of it first properly. So yeah, again, apply ridiculous levels of grease for me. Just get it everywhere. Like I say, I'm trying to use this tube up. I don't particularly like this grease. So yeah, I'm just applying it on the inside of the tube, and I'm just putting a bit of excess on the threads here. And with that thoroughly lubed up, we can screw it in place using the bottom bracket tool here. It's so greased up I can't remember which way to turn it in the frame. Yeah, so I've used far too much grease here. This is not professional, and I'm not a professional mechanic. Do not copy what I'm doing. This is for entertainment purposes only rather than advice. But yeah, that's far too much grease. And I don't like this grease, so there's a rag off the camera, and any excesses is getting wiped onto the rag. So yeah, overuse there, but the bike in the future should be protected from any corrosion in the bottom bracket, because if it is a area of sort of massive abuse, because it's at the bottom, and it drains, and anything that gets into the bike frame drains to this point and dribbles out the bottom, hopefully. So that's where you find bottom brackets having problems often. But yeah, that's a lot of excess grease there. It's not the way to do it. Let's get the front end of the bike installed next. So let's prepare the headset. Again, I'm running out of grease here. And next video you'll see my new greasing strategy. This grease is way better. This is, I can't remember who it is now. It'll come out in a minute. Yeah, but what I'm doing here is just I'm putting a protective layer of grease onto the headset to prevent any corrosion on it. So if any water creeps in between the seals, there's a layer of sort of sacrificial grease above and below the seal bearings to stop water ingress getting into it. So it sits there between all the seals. If any water does splash through, it does happen to get into that area, it's protected with a decent thick layer of grease. Reinstalling the forks. Off the camera I gave the forks a good polish up, and but I didn't give them a service. They actually felt really good, so I'm just left them alone. Maybe something to do in the future, but I didn't really want to open it up when it felt pretty good in the first place. So yeah, I'm just trying to get the headset installed here. I've got it all in order on my fingers there, of which bits goes on in which order. So you know, it's like the wedge, the seal, top cap, then the head, the stem spacers will go on there. And because of this sort of unique stem on this bike, which has a taper cut on it, you can't put any spacers above it. So I'm just having it as the factory had. It felt pretty good to me because I quite like a racy position anyhow. I don't really want it particularly any lower. See, with that sort of slash cut on that tube, this Synchros stem, I couldn't put any spaces above the stem anyhow, so if I wanted to lower it, I'd probably need to chop the fork down a little bit, and I don't really want to do that. So it felt good on a test ride at the height it was, so let's keep it as it is until there's a solid reason to adjust the height of it. Here I'm installing the Synchros head cap, and I really like this head cap. It's got some cool little bits on it that says "Look Up" and "Made in Canada A," which I think is pretty neat. This is when Synchros was an independent company rather than a part of Scott now, I believe Synchros is. I think it might have been a part of GT at some point as well, but this is when it was back then, when it was independent. Let's get the freshly cleaned up XT chain set installed next. Just going to give the bottom bracket taper a liberal coating of grease here. Again, this is one of those situations where we have different metals touching each other, so it's best to protect that interface with a layer of grease. We have a steel spindle in the bottom bracket here, which is a differently electrically potential. I think that's what galvanic corrosion is, if I reckon my bad engineering brain, to the aluminium of the crank arms. So we've got not electrically potential, galvanic potential. So at the opposite end of the scale, so they really don't like each other. What happens is they basically oxidize each other faster than they would naturally. So you can end up with a situation where the cranks cold weld themselves to the bottom bracket, and it becomes increasingly hard to, well, nigh on impossible to remove them sometimes. So yeah, a layer of grease there stops that happening. So with that chain set torqued all the way down to approximately FT is the torque rating I like to use on taper bottom brackets. Check out that spin. That's a spin that any road biker with their ceramic bearings would be envious of. That will just go on for days like that with that spin. It's so much better than most carbon modern stuff with their inboard press bearings. Let's get the front mech installed next, and let's speed run through this a little bit because it's a tedious, boring process getting it lined up and in the right proximity to the chainring. So I'm just going to fast forward through this section a bit because actually I'm not an expert. Generally I avoid front derailleurs. I don't overly love them. There's a time and a place, and on a sort of classic rebuild like this I think it's perfectly acceptable. But generally I prefer the one-by systems of modern bikes where you can just almost slam a shift through everything. You have to be a bit more careful with these front derailleurs and setups, and to avoid chain suck. So yeah, let's get it installed and approximately in the right position, and we'll do some fine tuning at the end to get it dialed in perfectly. Rear derailleur next, and I've gone for the derailleur that wasn't on this bike. I've actually pulled it off of what was the Cannondale Super V build. It was just in a better condition, but I gave it a good scrubbing just to make sure it's all good. Look at those nice clean jockey wheels. Yeah, everything's pretty decent and good about this derailleur now. It's not perfect. I would say it's a 7 out of 10. So perfectly serviceable and nice, but it's got a few cosmetic marks on it. Let's get the handlebars installed, and of course we're going for these the titanium handlebars that came off it in the first place. I'm just trying to show you some of the sort of features on it because it's kind of hard to pick up on camera, but yeah. I would like to pull those bar end plugs out of it just to see how thin the wall thickness is, but I think I could be opening a can of worms there, and I just decided to leave it alone in the end. One of the negatives about these handlebars is there's no real sort of obvious center mark to it. All the sort of tapers and stuff are very gradual. So it's just trying to line it up roughly in the right position at this stage, and break out the tape measure and start taking some measurements just to make it sure it's centered within the stem. A few measurements and an approximation of the bar roll, and we're just about there. We just make sure everything's correct. I think about 5mm off still at this point, so more adjustment is needed. I think this is where modern bikes come in better, because like they're just so simple now with a little gauge in the front printed onto the bars. It makes all this better, but then again, maybe that print hasn't been done centered, so you rely on something that's not necessarily correct, so there's always an excuse to break out a tape measure. With the bars correctly centered, just break out an Allen key and just nip up the stem bolts there. This will just, I don't need to do it tight because I'm going to adjust the bar roll on the floor. So at this stage all I'm doing is just making sure it's holding in place rather than like being torqued down, because once the wheel's on the bike and the bike's on the floor, I'll adjust the sort of bar roll to be ergonomically where I want it. If you look at it right now, it's kind of rolled back a bit. It will be once it's placed on the floor. Shift the time next, and these cleaned up really nice in the end. So just a bit of microfiber action and a bit of GT85 on the inside, not WD-40. Really got them clicking perfectly. And then if you look there carefully, or fancy pausing the video, you'll see one is an M750, while one is an M760, so slightly the wrong generation. And here you can see the kind of slight warping of the bars where the bar ends was, making it tricky to get these on. So just have to break out an Allen key here just to open up the pinch bolt a bit further than it would be. But they go on eventually after a bit of manipulating down to the bars. But yeah, I'm happy with this. If I come across a M750 shifter in my sort of retro bike hunting, if something comes with an M750, I think I would look to switch it just to have the complete M750 group set on this bike. But I'm happy enough with this M761, and it's got the dual shift indexing, which is a little bit better, I find. It's more modern. On with the M750 brake levers as well. I think they look mint on this bike. It's not something you see very often, these brake levers, but I think they look great. So yeah, happy with those, and ergonomically they feel fantastic as well. With all the controls, I'm not really torquing them down at this moment. I'm just nipping up the bolts just to have them to be able to hold themselves in position without sort of rattling around. Once I get the bike on its wheels and onto the ground, I can kind of fine tune and adjust their position exactly how I want it to be. Onto tyres next, and a surprise, it's not a Billy Bonker. I've actually got some IRC Mythos XC tyres from the late 90s here. They are a little bit perished. They're probably on edge of usability, so I think I'll end up switching it to Billy Bonkers if I end up using this bike properly for some decent ones. But for now, for this build, I fancied using some classic vintage period correct tyres, and I think these IRC ones look mint with a sort of red natural tan wall construction. Looks perfectly period correct. Greasing up the free hub here to install the XT level cassette, and that polished up and cleaned up perfectly in the end. I'm going to put a new chain on this bike. I'm just trying to line up the large tooth here without getting grease all over my hands, because I've taken the glove off and cleaned up my hands. But yeah, this cleaned up really well in the end. I'm really happy with the way this looked, and is performing very well. With all that in position, you can do the lock nut up. I'm not actually sure if this is the right lock nut for this cassette, you know. I went back through the video and I couldn't see it, and I know this cassette lock nut is the appropriate one for 11 speed, but it's not it doesn't say it's XC level one, but it will function fine. I'm not sure quite where the appropriate one went, but it's not like it's a fancy modern aluminium one. As far as I remember, it's just a steel lock nut, so anything to do. Brick releases, M750. Naturally, this is a full XT group set bike, is what we're basically boiling it down to, and I think that's really good. Like, when was the last time you saw a complete utter group set on a bike? Even a modern bike, like the hubs would be different or something could be different on it. So yeah, full XT on this bike. I think that's a really neat and sweet part of the build. With the wheels installed, how good are those IRC tyres looking on this build? I think it looks so good. Just absolute fire. Well, there's fire on the frame, so yeah, the sort of slightly red tan wall IRC tyres, so good. So chuffed with the way this looks right now. I know it's not like a complete rebuild and reimagination, but it just looks like a period correct XC weapon in my mind. Let's get some grips installed next, and I've gone for these Elri grips. This is skins, made in the USA, and the red's not quite perfect, but it's close enough and far enough away from the red paint on the bike to only sort of be noticeable if you're up really close. So yeah, just a bit of hairspray on the bars there, and I like to align the Elri sort of logo, which is embossed in the grips, facing forwards, because I think it just looks cool. So any sort of forwards shots of the bike, you can see little Ori in the grips there. I really like these grips as well. They can be quite cheap on Amazon, I've noticed. You have to pick your time. I think I picked these up quite some time before this build, maybe in May time. I'm sure they were £12, so not an expensive grip if you pick your time, and they come in loads of colours. So if you've got a build in mind, I like to buy them off Amazon. I mean, support your local bike shop, but my local bike shop's not selling many non-lock-on grips these days. So yeah, these are perfect for this sort of retro build, and they're sort of period correct. Maybe a bit too old for this build, but they're really comfortable, thick, comfy grips. So I really like them, and they're quite tacky and sticky and tactile feeling. So yeah, give them a go. Grips are sort of a consumable item in my mind. I'm pressing a brand new KMC 9-speed chain on this bike, and I've used my super secret wax dip in it. It's a combination of pillar candle wax and PTFE powder, so it's not sort of secret, but the ratios are are mine, and the PTFE size is my secret as well. So yeah, put that on this bike, and I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember the correct way to size a chain for a triple chain set. It was either too tight in the big or too slack in the small, so I've gone for the least worst option, which is too slack in the small out of the two. So I really need to re-look that up, but yeah, I think it's the safe way to size a chain for the bike. Just greasing up the brake post here on the fork, and as you can see, they cleaned up really well. I'm quite a fan of Manitou forks in some ways. I think they've been a bit undersold in the industry over the years, and it's a bit of an underdog fork compared to RockShox and Fox. Yeah, these Manitous, they feel mint. They feel really good, and I've always liked the way Manitous feel. It's a personal preference. Until Bombers come along, I think the Manitous had the best feel, really. Obviously Bombers are out at this point in time, but they're definitely way heavier. I've managed to get a set of Z2 lights recently, and that'll be in the next video. Sort of bike come with Z2 lights for a build in the future. And yeah, they are way heavier than these Manitous, that's for sure. So just installing these beautiful brakes here, just getting them torqued down, or not torqued down, nipped up to take out any slack in the system. I tend to build my bikes, and the sort of last thing I do is, once everything's aligned and I like it, I go around with a torque wrench, just making sure every bolt's up to specification or estimated, because at this stage not every bolt torque is written down on the frame like they are now. But you can look at a modern stem and it'll tell you exactly what torque rating it needs to be done, and that's the correct way to do things. Back in the late 90s, nobody was writing torque settings down for their components, and I don't know of anybody using torque wrenches way back then either. I mean, I was a kid, but I can't remember seeing any torque wrenches in bike shops. Let me know in the comments if that's wrong, but I think it's a relatively modern thing, torquing down to specification, because people didn't know what the specification was. It depends on the bolt materials, and the threaded material as well will limit the maximum torque value or appropriate torque value. Anyhow, I won't waffle on about torque values, too much engineering for this YouTube content. But yeah, beautiful XT M750 level brakes, parallelograms. Oh, I just love these brakes, they look so cool. One thing I did do, I guess some purists wouldn't like this, is most of these brakes come with a little soft pad which stops the noodle arm bashing into the brake and causing marring there, and I took it off because I think it's a visual disturbance to the sort of brakes. So I unpeeled that little sticker from the brakes because I think it looks better, and it's my bike and I'll do as I please to a certain extent. Onto the rear V brake install now. Yeah, this went on fine. I've pre-greased the post there. And I can see I haven't done that little valve screw up on the inner tube there, so that's not ideal, but I'll get that done in the future. Yeah, this installed fine, and with this one we can't install the brake bosses just yet because we have to do the special ones because we're using the carbon V-brake booster. It has these little sort of top hat type washers and extra long bolts which all get sandwiched in place, and it's a little bit of a faff to install, to be honest. That's why I'm kind of motoring through this. But yeah, it looks mint. That cleaned up really well as well. Just a bit of sort of wash and microfiber clean, and it looks perfectly brand new and serviceable, and yeah, no problems at all. With that installed and a bit of fettling to adjust the sort of tension within the brakes here, what I think I did, I actually switched out some of the brakes. So one of the rear and the front are mixed, so the worst condition ones are hidden by the brake booster. So the front brake, V-brake, is actually like the best condition 2 out of the 4, and the worst condition 2, they're very similar, but there is some slight wear on some bits of the rear of the bike in the end. So yeah, that's all getting there. This one just feels a little bit sticky, so I'm just working it through. It's fine in the end. It just felt a little bit sticky. So, and off camera, I did the cable job because I hate filming the cabling. It takes forever. I hate doing cabling. It takes forever for me. I'm really fussy about it, and I'm not that good at it, so I just did it off camera. Let's get the Flight Titanium installed, and as you can see, I think it's quite a good match for the bike. Colour's not perfect, but I still think it looks class. I think I am playing with the danger of having a McDonald's bike here with all the yellow and red going on, but I think the ratios are just about acceptable. It doesn't look too like McLovin' it, and I think it looks cool. Maybe in the future I'll swap this out for a WTB saddle and go back to some black grips if I'm thinking I need to tone it down a bit, but for this build I think it looks great. Pedals next, and I'm going for the classic, and it's not an XT part unfortunately. I'm going for the M520 basic Shimano SPDs because I think they are fantastic pedals. You can pick these up for 25 to 35 pounds from pretty much any bike shop, and they last forever. They're really easy to service, and I've got 4 or 5 sets of these pedals, and they're just utterly bomb proof. Just get these pedals. Like, don't muck around with anything else. These pedals are awesome if you like SPDs, that is. Yeah, small, neat, compact, not super light but durable and easy to service. So yeah, the weight saving on like a Shimano XT version is not significant. You'd have to jump up to the XTR level to see significant weight saving, but I think it's at the cost of durability because these have big steel axles, and I think the XTR ones might have titanium axles. But yeah, grease up the pedals and get them installed. With everything now installed, there's just a little bit of fine fettling to do with the bike on the ground. This saddle's kind of pointing a bit too nose up for my liking, and the way I do it is I kind of do it in my house. I look at the bricks on the wall and try to sort of align the saddle-ish with the bricks. Yeah, I just want to slide it forwards on the rails a bit more than that. But yeah, I just tweak it with and roughly align it with the bricks in my house to get it spot on and comfortable. It's just an easy sort of leveling system. I think maybe I got a little bit too nose down there, but it's more obvious on camera in real life. When you're eyeballing it, it's not quite as easy, but like the camera is not going to lie, but it's pretty close. Last little bit of setup to do. Yeah, I need to get the saddle at the right height for me. I generally run my saddles at 75 centimeters for off-road. I know it's a very particular measurement, but I'm quite fussy. I usually run 77 for road bikes and 75 for off-road, just to give myself a little bit more clearance to the saddle so I can maneuver the bike more easily, whereas the road bike I tend to run 77 centimeters. I guess it's one of those things you kind of learn what you like, but for mountain biking, so I like my saddle just a little bit lower and out the way, otherwise I find myself getting like punted over the bars more often, especially on a bike like this. And I wanted to just tidy up the seat post here where it's very scratched in from sort of marring in the frame, so I just used a Sharpie just to sort of hide some of the wounds. It's not perfect and it's far from ideal, it'll probably wear off really fast, but just helps my OCD a little bit. And the last thing to do before we take it out for a ride is get everything torqued down to approximate specifications. So when you're used to bikes, you know most stem bolts are usually like 4, 5, 6 Newton meters. You kind of learn where all the correct torque settings or approximate torque settings, because there's no torque settings written down anywhere for this bike, what they should be, so I'm just borrowing numbers from other bikes. So let's have a talk around the sort of finished bike and see what I'm happy with and what I'm not happy with. Starting at the handlebars, the Ori grips, pretty good, really comfortable. Just not 100% sure on the red to match with the rest of the components because it's a very sort of bright red. Maybe they're dulled down with time. The mix match of M750 and M760 shifters annoys me, but I'm happy to live with it just because the M760 has a double release function on the downshift, which I'm really commonly used to. It's a single release, I find a bit limited nowadays. The way the frame polished up I'm really happy with. It cleans up very nice. The forks performed faultlessly since I had them. I will give them a bit of a grease up in the future, but at this point in time I don't want the workload of having to strip down and find parts for them. That's a bit of a risk there. The wheels, fine. I did give the bearings a little grease up off of camera, but the video's long enough already, so I didn't want to show that. I kind of want to get some new stickers for them. They're a bit ruined. The Mythos XC tyres are really on their last legs and perish quite badly. You can see all the cracks there, so I'm planning to pull those off and put some Billy Bonkers on soon. I've probably done 40 kilometers with those tyres and they are hard as nails. They don't have much grip and don't roll particularly fast, but they do look cool as hell. Seat post, I would like to get it sort of better looking, but I think I'll have to work with Sharpies and stuff for now. It annoys me, but it's okay. Carbon fiber brake booster, that's mint. Keep it. That's a solid bit. Rear tire not as bad as the front when it comes to cracks, but these things don't corner. They are no comparison to modern rubber. So I would advise modern tires always. Maybe the Goodyears might be a good thing, the 2.2s. I think I've got space for them. Rear mech, and I'm really happy with the way the cassette cleaned up. The derailleur, 7 out of 10. Chain set, looks good. It's really big gear. I think it's a 44 tooth on this one, which is a bit... When do you need a 4411? What craziness do you need to be getting that speed? Overall, the frame sort of cleaned up really well, I think. I'm very happy with it. It rides really well. I'm going to give you a ride impression next. But overall, 7 out of 10. I'm really happy with it. I might tweak it in the future. So, to sort of spice up these videos, I thought I'd do a sort of riding impression at the end of the video on my sort of local cross-country loop here. So how does this bike feel? Well, it's not a super aggressive cross-country position compared to some of the 90s XC race machines I've had. It climbs amazingly well. It goes up hills like an absolute mountain goat. So this is a little sort of off-camber section. I'm just testing it up here on a local bridleway. It's probably 8 to 10%. So I'm in a granny ring here and it's just whinging up like no problem. On relatively flat to slightly downhill single track, this thing excels. It's a little bit twitchy, but in all the right ways. It's just very responsive. It probably wouldn't keep up with modern bikes, but it wouldn't be too far behind. It's where it starts getting chunky, it really loses out to the modern stuff. But it really slices and dissects single track very competently, and the sort of forgiving nature of this steel frame, it feels slightly flexy, but in a good way. That's the only way I can describe it. You really sort of carve and maneuver your way down single track beautifully. It's wonderful for that. On sort of the opposite, which would be like 10% grade, 15% grade, slightly technical downhills, we're finding the limitations of this bike now. It's twitchy at the front. You can see sort of from my position here, this is quite a rocky GoPro effect here, is hiding the grade, but it's steep-ish. It's not like a rocky shoot you would do on a modern bike. You wouldn't even notice this, but on this with the small wheels, old rubber, and narrow handlebars, it's a bit twitchy at the front. You can see it's a bit ponderous going downhill as the weight gets transferred to the front. It's still good fun though. It's like an all-round bike. It feels really balanced and fun. it's good fun, this bike, that's how I'd put it. But it wouldn't keep up with modern stuff. So that's about it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please give me some comments, likes, and subscribe if you've not subscribed before. This is the kind of stuff I do on my channel. I've changed the format up a little bit for this one, so this is a bit of a longer form video. I think it's RS20 according to my timer right now, which feels insane. But if you got this far, I really do hope you've enjoyed this one, and yeah, subscribe and come back for the next one. I got a couple more videos coming up soon, maybe one more bike build before the end of the year if I get my arse into gear. Yeah, thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.